This is a tutorial for the Sony FX6 at Bar University. The F6 at Bar comes in a satchel doctor bag which zips from front to back and has got padded compartments. Here we have the Sony FX6 camera. Always make sure it's got its front cap on as well. With every camera there is a 24-70 G series Sony lens. This lens is f4 throughout the range. Comes in a pouch as well. With the FX6 kit we have two 128GB Angelbird cards. These are very expensive, so please look after them. And you also get a card reader as well. So to download these as quickly as possible to your computer, I suggest you use this. Also have this little adapter, so it's USB-C or old-fashioned USB here. Again, make sure that you get all of these in the kit. Here we've got a Hawkswood fast battery charger which connects to the mains. Included is the Sony battery that comes with the camera, but we've also got an additional high-capacity Hawkswood battery. These batteries are BP batteries and they are different to the NPV batteries that look very similar that we use in the Shinobi monitors, but also in the back of some of the panel lights that we have. Always make sure that you've got two of these batteries. Here is the main supply. If you don't want to use batteries, let's say you're setting up in a studio or you're just doing an interview and there's no need to change your batteries, just use this and it plugs straight into the back of the camera. Each kit will have a laminate listing the contents of the bag. Camera, batteries, battery charger, main supply, small rig bar which should be attached to the camera when you get it, cards, card reader, pouch with lens, rain cover which is tucked inside the side pocket of the bag, and there should always be a lens cap and a body cap. So let's take a tour of the camera starting from front to back. We have got auto manual focus settings. You have to make sure that these tie up with whatever you've got on the lens. We have got our main selector wheel here, but we can also press that in to confirm or action something. We have got a push auto focus button here, and then we've got a white balance set here. Let's take a look at the side of the camera. I will be going into more detail on some of the functions. Here we've got a record button, we've got a hold button, which means you can lock down the functionality of the camera once you've set something up. We've got a flag button where you can select favorite takes as you go. We've then got our ND preset button, so we can go from clear and then we can add NDs as we go. This slider here, we can go into variable ND, and this gives us more control, so we can go between fractions of NDs, okay? Then we have got our selection wheel button up and down, which we can click in. We have then got our iris button here. This is a way that we can select our iris and then we can then control it through the wheel, but we can also control our iris on the top handle as well, which I'll show you later on. Along here, then we've got a cancel back button. We've got our thumbnail button. This is for looking through our particular clips as we've shot them. Here we can access the full menu by having a long press, and the quick menu that comes up by accessing a short press. Again, I'll talk about that properly later. We have got S and Q. This is for slow and quick. This is for dialing in different frame rates, though again we can choose frame rates in the menu. We've got assignable buttons 2 and 3 if we want to give these particular jobs. We've got a display button which we will be using quite a lot, this way that we can rack between having a clean display in the viewfinder or actually having all the information that we need. And then below then we have got the ISO gain button, white balance, shutter, and then these are sort of hangovers from sort of more older industry cameras. This is where we can put in low, medium and high gain, but it's not something we do with this camera. And then we have got white balance preset. Moving on to the side, we have got our audio section. This little flap opens up, mainly to stop these buttons from being fiddled with. So you've got auto levels here and manual levels down here. And then once the manual levels are engaged, then we can then use our dials. For those of you familiar with these Sony's X70s and Z90s, we can use these dials in the same way. And these correspond with the XLR inputs in the top handle, which we'll look at later. And then we've got the on and off button for the camera itself. Let's not forget about that. So looking at the rear left of the camera, we've got the headphone port there. We have got the SD card slots here. So again, there's 2 cards in here already, but you can operate with one. If you had to, the camera will jump from one to the other on a long take. Here we've got the large Hawkswood battery here supplied. We can check if it's charged by pressing this button in here. Also note the large Hawkswood does actually have a D tap on the back, and you could run, if you had the right cable, you could run off here maybe into a monitor. And then to get the battery out, we've got the battery release button there. So looking at the rear right of the camera, we have got all of these little flaps that will open up. So we've got our HDMI port there, SDIs out, time code in with an associated switch there, in or out. Then we've got a little flap that opens up. You can put a USB connector in there or a remote connector. That might be for firing the camera. And then at the very bottom here, we have then got, if I peel this up, you can see you've got an AC in. Remember, we've got a power cable that will fit into the camera as well if you just want to run studio. Let's have a look at the XLR handle. We've got these rubber covers here. The XLR is exposed, but also we've got these slider buttons where we can choose between mic 48 for phantom power, or just a mic, let's say you've got a radio mic, or down here from line, which could come from a mixer or the desk. Now, if I then pan this around like so, then we can see the rest of the top handle. We have got the inbuilt mic there. We have then got our fire button. We have got our iris control, which is this wheel here. The rocker doesn't do anything because the lens is not supported. We've got a hold button here, like the one on the side, where basically we can lock all the controls down if we don't want anybody to change anything. We've got a signable button 7 and 8 here, and we have got a rocker pad there, which we can use to navigate around the menu. Looking down on the hand grip, you can see my hand would go in here, and we've got a fire button there, and we have got a direct menu. This will select whatever's in the viewfinder. It doesn't bring the actual menu up, but it means that we can get to stop and shutter speed and ISO, and we can navigate around by using this pad here. We have got, just back there, should you need to disconnect the viewfinder, see the VF there, viewfinder, this presses in and then pushes out. I'm not going to do that now. And then at the top here, if I just undo this little button a bit more, I can spin this over there, and we've got focus magnification. This is your friend. If you press that, you will zoom in 100% onto your viewfinder, and this is really useful for doing manual focus. Also, if we go a little bit further on, you can see here we have got, that is another way of doing our iris control. We can do the iris control as well on the top handle of the camera, but also within the menu system, but this is by far the easiest way to do it. Here's our electronic viewfinder, our EVF. This can be rotated around in whatever position that we need. If we want to actually open it up, we've got this light hood, and if I put my fingernail in there, I can ping this open like so. So you can see, we can see all of our information in there in the viewfinder. If I tilt this up, we have then got this helpful little slider, which means that we can flick the image. Well, I'm going to do it like so, here, flicking the image, but it means that we can change its sort of its rotation. Okay, I'll just demo it like so. If I do this, can you see the image changes? And this is really useful if we had got, say, the camera high up and we're looking at this from an odd angle. Okay, right, I'm just going to go and close this up because I'm going to rotate this around, and Mark's going to do a bit of focus pull for me here. Okay, and then if I turn this over, really helpful buttons here. We've got our zebra button and our peaking button. Zebra, if we punch this once, twice, we can bring up 2 zebra levels, in this case 70 and 94. Peaking turns on the focus peaking, which you should all be familiar with. And then the assign button, we can change that, but the normal assignment for this is to show a different display. On the top of the camera, we've got this tilter top plate. This enables us to keep our small rig rod in place. Now this is on the laminate, all right, but the reason we keep this is that we can attach from here a follow focus mechanism on there. The Sony FX6 has got 2 menu systems, the full menu and a short menu. Let's have a look at the short menu first. We find this by pressing the menu button. We get the short menu. Up at the top right here, we have got the page number. So if I click on here, I can select which page I'm looking at, 1, 2, 3, etc. If I go back to 1 and I press in our navigation button, wheel, then you see that selected. Now, as I scroll through these options, anything that's in a box is something that I can adjust. So here, if I wanted to change the frequency, i.e. the frame rate of the camera, I can press in and I have got some selections as such, 24, 25, okay? But if I scroll through here, I can't get to shutter. So we're going to have to get to shutter from the side of the camera. So if I want to come back up to the next page, I've then got to just scroll the wheel all the way back up, press on there, and then I can then go to the next page. So to access the full menu, this time we press and hold the menu button until we get this. This is probably a little bit more like the menu that we'd expect to get if you've used a Sony camera before. And we've got all these different sections on the left-hand side: user, shooting, that's mostly about camera; project, that's setting up the actual shoot; paint look, time code media, monitoring, audio, etc., etc. And then let's say if we go into user, if we click in, then that brings up a selection here. And as you see, if I click down on the left-hand side, every time I move down, it gives us whatever options that we have got relating to that page. The other thing is that the page goes down lower than what we can see in the window. If you're using the Sony A7, each page is all you can see, where in this case you can go all the way to the bottom. If I just put my little fingernail in there, can you see that line? That is going down and indicating how much is left in that menu. So there are tons and tons of stuff in here, but fortunately you don't need to use all of them. Okay, so to come back out of this menu, I can either just press that button once, or if I was back in the menu, it's a bit more long-winded, so let's hold back on. Then I could go and get out of it the more long-winded ways by scrolling up to the top, and then go to the back button here, and then that then takes me out of user, and then I can then get to shooting, project, and then just press the button once, turn off. To format the card, once again, long press into menu, user, select that, and then all we need to do is go down to format media, A, because we've only got one slot in A. If we've got 2, you could then choose to navigate to which one you want. A, full format. And again, we want to execute, select that, full format. There is another way to format the card, which might be a bit quicker. If we do a quick press and we get the short menu up, and then we then need to then guide through to which page? This page, number 8, then I could choose to format there. I'm not going to do it because I've recorded something on this already. Let's set the recording format of the camera. Long press menu, user, we're going to go to project, okay, and then we choose base setting. We've got some choices here, custom all the way down to Cine EI. First things first, we're going to choose custom. The reason we're doing this is where we can find the picture profile, which is called S-Cinetone. Let's go back. Then we can select format. Here we have got some choices. So we've got our frequency. We could choose 24 or 25. 24 is what you're normally going to be using for narrative work. However, I'm going to leave this on 25 because I want to show you something. If I went down to image or scan mode, that FF means either full frame. This is one of the reasons we bought this camera, it's because it's a full frame. But if for whatever reason, maybe you wanted our lenses to behave in a particular way, we could go to S35. And that means you're only going to be using the middle part of the sensor. For sake of argument, maybe the middle 60 or 75%. But we're going to use full frame. Then next we can go to codec, which is XAVCI. All you need to remember is L stands for low quality. Never use that. So let's go XAVCI. And then the video format, we have got the choice of at the bottom, we have got HD. I really recommend that for your third year work you should be using 4K, because if you're lucky enough to get your film into festival, it's going to look so much better. But the next one up is UHD, ultra high definition. It's not called 4K because it's not actually 3804, but that is HD magnified times 2, scaled up times 2. If you want true 4K and you want to have a slightly wider image, choose that one, 4096. If you want to present your film as a widescreen by cropping the top and bottom, you might as well shoot as wide as you possibly can, so you'll choose the top one. But for standard filming, you would choose UHD. Let's select that one. Let's choose a different picture profile. At the moment, if you see here, we are using S-Cinetone, but we want to use this camera, we want to use it in called Cine EI. EI stands for exposure index. This is the camera working at its absolute best. To do this, it needs to shoot at a log setting, okay? So we're going to go long press in the menu. We're going to go down to project, and then we are then going to go base setting. Now we are going to select Cine EI. I don't know what EI quick means, but no good will come of using that. So let's go Cine EI. Okay, and then we do need to execute, which means the camera might turn itself on and off. No, it looks like it's okay. We go back. Can you see here? See the image has gone a bit flatter. Can you see my finger there? We have now got S-Log3. Now I'm going to go into the quick menu, select that, base ISO sensitivity there. You've only got your two choices, so you choose the top one. See how bright it's become? That's like about 4 or 5 stops. Choose that there. In shooting an EI, get into the habit of only using those ISOs. The FX6 has got a built-in ND system, like most of the cameras we've used. What's different about this one? It's got a variable ND, which means we can choose to put it in amounts of stops, or we can just guide it in as much as we want. Let me show you how the two different systems work. So at the moment, the image I've got is a little bit over bright, but if I put the ND filter in, we'll hear it go in. That's 2 stops. Now it says, if I just put my finger down to the bottom there, ND 1.4, but in Sony terms, that's 2 stops, okay? Then what I can do is if I press the plus button, I can add 2 more stops there. So that's 16. Okay, we barely see anything, it's 2 more stops. Then if I press it one more time, 64. Okay, 64 is then 6 stops. So we've gone from 2 stops, 4 stops and 6 stops. See, that's 64 just about in here. Now let's go and take this all back out again. I'm now going to show you how it works with the variable ND filter. Okay, so we have to click across the side, ND. So we're going to push this in, turn it until it comes into place. Okay, so there's our 2 stops comes in. So that's a set amount. But then after that, I can, if you just have a look down where my finger is here, I could start wheeling this in numerically, like so. If you only use the NDs, and we're on the ND presets, if they are not coming as we would expect here, quarter, 16 and 64, which are two stop differences, you might want to go into the presets and change that. To do that, it's going to be long press on the menu. We are going to navigate down to shooting. We're then going to navigate down to ND filter, and see we've got our presets. Now, this is as I would expect them, but let's say somebody's changed this. I could then change 64 here all the way down to 128, and I could change preset to 64. And then that would be 2 stops at a quarter, but then that goes straight then to 6 stops and then to 7 stops. So we won't want to go for something, let's go for about what we would expect to see, which in this case, because you can see here, this is quite handy to show you, that's 2 stops, that's 3 stops in Sony terms, 4 stops, 5 stops, 6 stops, 7 stops. I'm going to lay in a graphic on the right hand side which will show you this in more traditional ND filters. So let's go back to 16 for this one, and let's go back to 64 on this one. To change the amount of light coming in through the lens, we are going to adjust the size of the iris. There's a wheel on the top handle and there's a wheel on the side grip on the right hand side. And by doing that, if we have a look at where my little finger is down there, can you see the number is changing and the image is getting darker, brighter. The other way we can do this is if we press the iris button on the side of the camera, then it is highlighted. I can now use our usual jog control wheel, which we've been using pretty much everything so far, and I can do it that way. We go full menu, long press, we go to shutter, that was in the camera, and then we go, rather than angle, we go to speed. If I click that up, and then I just clear the menu, can you see now? We're back to a 50th. Our shutter angle, if we want to change that, we press the button on the side of the camera, and then we use our jog wheel to change the shutter angle. So normally, if we want to use the film look, our shutter angle is always half of 360 degrees. So that is 180, and that corresponds with 50th of a second, shooting at 25 frames per second, which you should all be used to, because that's one of the contributing factors to what we call the film look. To look at the shots that we've recorded so far, we press the thumbnail. And then it brings our images up, and then we can navigate over by using our usual jog wheel. Okay, we can press that and that will play it. To get back out of there, I just press thumbnail again and we're out. To change the white balance on the camera, we press the white balance button here. Okay, I can then use our scrolling wheel and I can go through. Can you see how the image is changing? It's getting a lot bluer there. So if I went to our old favourite, 3200, that sort of tungsten balance there, our daylight in Studio B is looking very cool and blue. But I can put this back up to our preset. Well, I happen to know it's 5600, and here it's looking neutral. We always make sure that we're on the preset switch at the bottom side of the camera here. We can set the camera up with a manual white balance by putting a piece of white paper or grey card in, much as you would with any other camera. So with this situation that we've set up here, our background we know is neutral because the camera's set up at 5600, but this foreground card here is very, very warm indeed. So let's see how we actually set up the white balance to make this white. To do this, we need to fill the screen with white paper or grey card, which is catching the orange light. We're going to make sure that we are in A or B preset. Let's go to A here. Then I press the white balance button at the front of the camera. Hold that, executing, and can you see the number there is 3036, which is what I'd expect it to be, because it's actually quite a bit warmer. If I pull this out now, you can see even though the background has gone quite blue, our foreground card has become neutral again. It's going to look a bit orange because the background is blue, so it's tricking our eye, but that has made that look quite neutral again. We can record high speed on this camera. The simplest way to do it is that we can just go into our menu, and then if I just select this in, we can just go to frequency scan, and then we've got our options, and we can go up to 50 or 59.94, which for the sake of argument is 60 frames per second, and we can do that at HD and UHD and at 4K. But if we want to go quite a bit faster, go at say 240 frames per second, which we can do at HD, we have to use the S&Q setting. Just come out of this. If we have a look, 25 frames per second. We're going to press the S&Q button on the side of the camera, S&Q on, but we do need to go into our full menu to get into this. I happen to be in S&Q motion, but if you want to see where that came from, again, it's in shooting and then it's S&Q motion. Let's select that in, and then we're on, and then we go frame rate. As we are only at 1080 HD, we can go all the way up to 240 frames per second. Let's select that. Let's come out of this. We have now got 240 frames per second. That's going to be our run rate, but our sequence rate is 25 frames per second, which means when we play this back on a 25 frames per second timeline, or even just in the thumbnails, it's going to play as super slow motion. Now, just before I do a test, I have lost a lot of light. Our shutter angle is 180, so whatever our frame rate is, because the shutter angle is half, it's always going to maintain the film look. I actually don't need to do any kind of calculations here to keep our shutter angle the same. We do need to whack a load of extra light into this. The simplest way of doing that is just to bounce up our ISO back up to the second base, okay? And this is a nice simple way of doing this. So I'm just going to go quick menu here. Then I can then go to there and I can change my base ISO to 4 stops above, which will just be high. And you see now we've got some light. I'm going to press record, and then I'm going to put my hand in and do something quick. Let's have a look. I'm just going to go to my thumbnail, and if I play the last shot here, take note, there's no audio on S&Q. If you wanted audio, you have to shoot at 50 or 60 frames, and if you then keep the audio.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to look at setting the inputs of the camera ready for audio, as well as monitoring audio through your headphones and where those settings are located. The easiest way to get to that is hold down the menu button to get to our main menu, and then you want to scroll down until you get to the audio tab here. We go into here and we get audio inputs. Nicely it's laid out, audio inputs, audio outputs. Nice and simple. Go into inputs. And then you can see this camera actually has 4 channels of audio recording compared to, say, the Z90 that we're used to or anything like that, which only has 2 usually, and then an internal mic as well. This one allows us to choose what we are recording on all 4 channels. So currently channel 1 and channel 2 are set to input 1 and input 2. So these are actually the XLRs that are located on the top handle that we showed earlier. So if you were going to plug in an external microphone, say a Rode Go or a shotgun mic, that's where you would be plugging that in, and that's where you would want to set these up so you can listen to those. We also have our internal microphone set up on channel 3 and channel 4, just so we're getting a bit of stereo for our internal mic. The internal mic is located at the front of the top handle. If the top handle is removed, there is no internal microphone. So that's something to take note of. But of course, we can choose different inputs for channel 3 and 4 as well if we don't want the internal microphone. Or we can even turn them off altogether if we don't want some kind of noise coming from those channels, which we wouldn't want messing up our other recordings. So I'm going to keep that as internal microphone for now. As we go down, we can see we get quite a few settings for each channel now. So we've got input reference, that's kind of your gain, or an input reference or gain for those two channels initially. So input 1 and input 2, their controls are actually located physically on the side of the camera with those dials that we showed earlier, whereas channel 3 and 4 are controlled through the menus. They're kind of more of a digital channel. So if I scroll down, it shows you a bit more obvious here. We have channel 3 input level and channel 4 input level. You have to adjust them through the menu here. You can't adjust them with physical buttons, whereas channel 1 and channel 2 are adjusted with dials on the side of the camera. So usually you would set up your main microphones to be on channel 1 and channel 2 because they're easier to access and adjust on the fly. We have a bit of wind filter control here, so that's really handy to have in there if you're filming out on location and you just need to adjust some of that level. So you get a little bit of control over what you've got here rather than having to do everything in post. Scrolling down, I'm not going to go into every single setting here. You can go through this menu yourselves, or you'll have your sound recordist go through here and see what they want to turn on and off. But you can see that everything you need for audio recording is within this menu page here. Now if we go back, say we want to monitor our audio, how do we check that our audio is clear, crisp, and what we want? We go into audio output. Now in audio output we have monitor channels. So this is actually the channels that we will hear in our headphones when we plug them into our port on the side of the camera. Now I can choose to have channel 1 and channel 2 in my ears, so probably left and right, and I'd be able to hear them independently. So if we had two microphones plugged in, I'd be able to hear them separately in each ear. Internally I can also have channel 3 and channel 4 if I've got them set up to different mics, or I can have a mix of all the channels together. Now that can become a bit hectic if you've got 4 different mics plugged in or something like that. But sometimes it's handy if you just need to know that maybe one of your inputs isn't working or isn't turned up loud enough. You can turn that on just to get a rough idea of what everything is being recorded, as well as just getting the individual channels, which you can go through and check that everything sounds as crisp as you would like. Usually I would have it on channel 1 and channel 2, as I would have my main microphones on channel 1 and channel 2, unless I'm doing more microphones than just 2. You can adjust your volume. Right now it's on 0. That's because we haven't got headphones plugged into this camera. Normally when you plug it in, it'll go to the top end of that, and normally I wouldn't have it on max volume. I would turn it down a bit because, again, you don't want to judge your levels off the audio volume coming through the headphones. You want that just to be a nice level for your ears and it to be crisp. Your audio levels should be adjusted from the visuals on the screen, not from your headphone volume. We can choose to have it stereo or mono if that's your preference, and you can also send audio through a HDMI here if you want to send it to a screen or a speaker or something like that for monitoring. So it's really simple, the audio settings. You've just got those two menus and that will help you set up your audio recording, as well as the physical buttons on the side of the camera to get your levels correct.
You may want to present your finished film in a different aspect ratio than 16:9. So that could be like CinemaScope, widescreen, or it could be something more of a square format like 4:3. Let's show you how to set the markers up. Go full press. We're going to go down to monitoring. Then we're going to go to marker. And then at the moment, everything is off. So I am going to go on. We have also, let's have a look at what markers we've got in there. At the moment, we've got aspect marker as a line, and what we need to look for is aspect select. So at the moment, it's 4:3. Now you can see as I skip through these, so we could go completely square, 4:3, then 16:9, which is everything. Then we can go to 2.35, and then the widest one that they have in here is 239, which is there. Now obviously you're going to record everything, but then it's up to you. Once you've used this to frame properly, you can end up putting your crops top and bottom or side to side in Premiere. If you don't want to see what's outside of the lines, you can use sort of a shape instead. So let me show you to do that instead of lines. So we're going to go back, and then what we do is we go aspect marker, and we go mask like that. And then we can then choose how thick we actually want this to be. So that's the aspect mask. So we can choose the density. So if we have nothing, it's not doing anything. Or we could go fully black, and then you can't see anything past it. It's always a good idea to have it as a grey, so you can just about see what's on the edge of frame if like booms are coming in and stuff like that. The camera has got some impressive autofocus features, but only if the lens supports this. So the kit lens that comes with the camera has got autofocus, but if you use one of the Nissi Primes, their manual lenses, there's no autofocus in there at all. But at the moment we've got a kit lens on, so we've got autofocus set up on the kit lens, but also we've got autofocus set on the front of the camera. If I just touch an object, can you see the control board in the studio? That goes in focus. If I then touch the grayscale, that goes in focus. If I touch the grip in front, again, that goes in focus. The other thing that's quite clever with this is that if I put something in shot here, I can then select this remote control. You see the little square has found the focus on there, and then that will then follow that around. Okay? If I turn all of these off and want to go manual, what I do need to do is to make sure that I press the peaking on the side of the viewfinder, and then I've got manual control there. Not forgetting, if I press the 4 button on the handle here, that pushes us in, and that helps a lot with our set in focus. Mark is going to show us how to bring up the waveform, which is pressing the display button, which has got number 9 on the side of the viewfinder on the Sony. Okay, so if you press that through, and we've got 3 choices. First one is the waveform, and then if you can hit it again, you've got the vector scope, which we're not going to use, and then you go again, and then we have got the histogram. Now the histogram and the waveform both represent exposure with 2 yellow lines, and the yellow lines represent the zebra pattern levels. But let's go on to waveform because it's by far the easier one to understand. Okay, so what we have got in the waveform here is a representation of the brightness of the scene. So clearly, over on the right hand side here, it's a lot brighter, and that is recognized by that sort of bump on the left hand side. On the black side, which is this black drape here, but also you can see on the side of the waveform there, there's a big gap of nothing there. There's a bit of signal at the very bottom, which is that black wiggly line, and that shows how little signal that there is there. So you might be wondering, what are these yellow lines? What do these yellow lines mean here? These are the zebra patterns. I mean, hopefully some of you know zebras from first and second year, but the zebra pattern represents a brightness level. It doesn't necessarily mean anything's over or underexposed. It just tells us where a level of exposure is. So Mark is going to now go through the menu system and show us how to set our zebra levels, and we've got 2 of them that we can use. Okay, so if we go to zebra 1 first, okay, and we go on, and then we go across, and we choose the level. Now it happens to be 70. Now Mark can skip up and down by using the navigation, but let's leave it at 70. And 70 on when we're sort of recording sort of what you see is what you get, or Rec 709, or in this case S-Cinetone, 70 works really well for skin tones, but the brighter skin tones. So Mark has pressed the zebra button on the side of the viewfinder, and if you can just cycle through that, you see it goes on and off, there. We'll talk about Zebra 2 in a minute. Zebra 1, so 70%, that is good on the brighter parts of the skin. Anything less, that's fine, but you can see the brighter parts of the skin are 70. There is another zebra in here, so if Mark clicks through to Zebra 2, nothing is actually happening. Now Zebra 2 is at 95% and above. Now if I have a look at the Zebra 2 line, can you see that bright bump there? I'll be zooming in on that in the edit. Nothing is going above 95%. Now if Mark was just to take the aperture, if he opens up a couple of stops, so he can go to 5, 6 or even 4, can you see the zebra is coming in, and here the limit is going above that yellow line, which means that is going above 95%. Now that itself is not the end of the world if that is meant to be a really bright thing, like a window in shot, and you just can't see out of it because it's burnt out. But working to a top level is quite important, particularly when we get to S-Log3, because we can push that quite bright, but when we get to a certain point you can't see anything. With S-Cinetone, what you see is what you get. So if it's burning out on the monitor, it's going to be burning out on the shot. And I'll be popping in the actual footage from the camera in front, and you can see how that's starting to be burnt out. If Mark can just open up to f4, which will be the max this lens will go, hopefully we will see, so you see my skin tones here, they are burning, they're peaking, but also so is the back wall. And when we cut to the actual shot, we'll see that that is completely maxed out.